Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Redmen TV and your latest episode of Expert Insight. My name is Dan Clubb. I will be your host for this one. As ever, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Serie A commentator and press conference interpreter, interestingly enough, Patrick Kendrick. Patrick, how you doing, mate? You okay?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No, my pleasure. I was always going to get you on anyway, and then I noticed you had the most handsome man in football as your sort of header thing on Twitter alongside you, so it was a done deal from that moment on for me. Anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, it's Alison Becker, but I'm sure you knew that already. Sound. Let's do this. Federico Chiesa, when I first reached out, the move was a possible one. Now, some hours have passed, and it's a definite one. We've seen him in Liverpool kit. He's been talking in glowing terms about Anfield and Never Walk Alone, the football club, saying all the right things. Let's dive into your perspective of him then. Commentator, as I mentioned. So to begin with, Patrick, I'm going to ask you, have you enjoyed commentating on Federico Chiesa down the years? And have you enjoyed watching him? Have you got sort of some nice moments from his footballing ability?
Absolutely. No, I've really enjoyed commentating on Chiesa down the years. I would say that it's tinged with a little bit of frustration because when you see him at his very best, then you start to wonder, why can't you do that week in, week out? I'm sure we'll get on to, his pros and cons, but consistency is perhaps one area where he has fallen down. But at his best, he's a scintillating player. I think a lot of people that don't follow Italian football have seen him at Euro 2020 rather, 3 years ago now. But I remember in particular, there was a game between Fiorentina and Bologna that I had to do. I got a very late call. Fortunately, it was off tube, so I was able to do the game. But a colleague called in sick, and at the 11th hour, I had to do Fiorentina Bologna, which is a sort of derby. At the 11th hour, and I had no time to prepare much in the way of notes or sort of posting on my just general knowledge of both teams. And luckily, Chiesa that day decided to score a hat-trick, which made the game very easy to commentate on. That was during his Fiorentina days. It was that potential that obviously led to his move to Juventus. And there have been some standout moments in the Coppa Italia in particular. That seemed to be his competition. I remember him scoring in a final against Atalanta. When another now Premier League player scored as well, Dejan Kulusevski. And at his best, he's almost impossible to defend against. He can go one way, he can go the other. He can drive in off the left flank onto his right foot, and he's a good finisher. So I think throughout his time, I have enjoyed covering him, but I think it is probably now time for him to take that next step and explore another country and see whether he can compete in the Premier League, having shown what he can do at international level.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that actually leads us nicely on to the next question in a lot of ways, because obviously, this move away from Juventus has been touted seemingly all summer. We know about sort of the contract standoff, though he was a pain to stress it wasn't as it played out in the media potentially in the aftermath of his move, but by the by a little bit. And obviously, he has left Juventus now, and it feels like it's been coming for some time. It's almost a protracted exit in a way. So I take it from what you just said there, Patrick, that you're not necessarily surprised that it's come to this. And are you almost pleased to see him make this move because you said it there, he needs a fresh challenge, he needs to challenge himself in a different arena and go and see what he's all about and continue, or rather maybe get back onto the trajectory that he once was on?
Yeah, I am pleased to see him to go abroad because already in the last 3 years, you sensed a lot of frustration in his game. Allegri came back for the last 3 seasons. There are a lot of criticisms about the way Juventus were playing, whether it was the right system for Chiesa, 3-5-2. Occasionally he's played wide right, occasionally he played as a second striker. I think his best position is definitely as a left winger in a 4-3-3. And I haven't seen too much of Liverpool since the new manager's been in, but obviously that would work under the previous regime. And I know they're going for continuity there. So I think it is time for him to step outside of his comfort zone. This is someone who's grown up in a footballing family. His father was a Serie A legend. Because of that, he had quite a privileged upper middle class upbringing. He went to international school. You'll have seen he speaks pretty good English, especially for an Italian. I would say he speaks very good English. I say that as a slight linguistic snob. But yeah, he's definitely got what it takes on his day to thrive in the Premier League in terms of his pace. He's very direct. He's going to work well in a team that will dominate the ball. He'll also work well in a team that presses very high in transition. So it has stagnated a bit. He's never really shown that same level from the summer of 2021 since he had the serious knee injury in January 2022. So you need to look at it. I guess it all depends on whether you're an optimist or whether you see the glass as half empty. Because if you're optimistic, you would say he's shown that level before. He's not yet 27. This might be the fresh start he needs. That's what he can achieve. Or you can look at it the other way and say he's already peaked and this is a player whose career trajectory is on the wane. I suppose Liverpool are looking at it from the former perspective, and Juventus are trying to cut their losses, and they're having a huge revamp in terms of style and personnel anyway. So that factors into the move as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I think Liverpool will just say that Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards, etc., et al. Will have ran the numbers, and they'll be making that judgment call based on that first bit you said, the fact that they think that he does just need a fresh start. As you mentioned, he does just need to almost go again and sort of restart his career and jumpstart it in a way. And hopefully Liverpool and Anfield is the landing spot from which he can do that. Describe him as a player for us then, if you can. You've already touched on a few of his qualities along the way. You mentioned some of his pros earlier on. At his very best, Federico Chiesa, he's a couple of years removed from that now. But what is he all about? What will he bring to a fit and firing football team?
Well, he's not afraid to take on opposition players. He's not one of those players that gets the ball to feet and they're immediately looking to pass it because they're worried about running at someone and losing the ball or losing possession. He's very direct. Occasionally he can be accused of holding onto the ball too long, and perhaps he's almost a bit of a throwback, really. And he's a very unusual Italian player because traditionally, Italy would produce very tactically sound players, good on the ball, but never really the sort of searing pace, old school winger. And he is very much that. Occasionally, he'll just put his head down and drive at opposition players, which can be devastatingly good if he goes past those players. Occasionally, it can be to the frustration of his teammates because maybe he doesn't necessarily spot a teammate who's in a better position. But I love the way that he picks the ball up on the touchline. He's got very good acceleration from a standing start. He'll fit it into a teammate's feet and then expect the ball back. So I think in terms of his profile and his skill set, I think it'd be a very good fit with the Premier League. He's a much better fit, I think, with Liverpool, what they're trying to do, than what Juventus were trying to do in the previous 3 years. And clearly the new coach at Juventus, Thiago Motta, hasn't seen what he needs in Chiesa's game, hence why he's decided, probably in agreement with the club, that it was best for the player to seek a new opportunity elsewhere. But he's a good finisher as well. I think at his best, no, I don't want this to come back to bite me, but there's a little bit of Thierry Henry at his best, a little bit, in the way that he can drive in towards the sort of left corner of the box and then try and bend it into the far corner. He doesn't have the same consistency in terms of finding that finish, but you have seen him be able to do it. So this is a player who can provide assists, who can score goals, but I don't think he scores enough goals. I don't think he's ever been as prolific as he should be for someone of his ability. And I would say it's more athletic ability than footballing brain first and foremost. He doesn't trap a ball that's dropped down 50 yards from the sky with two players around him. He's not going to dazzle you with close control and nutmegs and stepovers and things like that. But some people would say that's what you need, especially if you've got a centre forward that wants an early ball. He's going to try and just knock it away from his fullback and cross it in or drive towards the box himself. So I quite like him because he's a unique player, Chiesa. There's no one else like him in the Italian game. And I think he reminds me a little bit of some of the wingers I grew up watching in the Premier League, put it that way.
There's a lot to like about all of that, I'd say, to be honest with you, Patrick. The Thierry Henry comparison is enough to... You could have said that at the start and could have all packed up and gone home, to be honest.